And what positive note would you each have to end tonight? What words of hope and love that for Israel, for the Jewish people, you would want us to take? Peter, I'll have you continue and give you, Danny, the last word.
Look, I'm not an optimist about the situation that Israel is in. And I fear that the consequences of being a generation which was alive during the collapse of Israeli democracy, which I think is kind of what permanent control of the West Bank would mean, will have very, very profound and dangerous consequences for Jews around the world, that it will have in some ways the reverse of the consequences that it had for our parents and grandparents when they were the generation that witnessed the rebirth of a Jewish state after 2,000 years. But just because I'm not an optimist doesn't mean I don't have hope, right? There were a lot of other moments we can imagine in Jewish history where there wasn't a lot of cause for optimism, but people still had hope. We are shown to be a people with extraordinary regenerative capacity. And Israel is, as Danny rightly said, an extraordinary society, a society with extraordinary dynamism, extraordinary economic dynamism, extraordinary cultural dynamism. Its politics, I think, have been to some degree hijacked. Hijacked partly by a settler complex that moves the governments further and further towards making Israeli control permanent. But you know what? Our politics are also sometimes hijacked. Just like I have faith in the American character and the American spirit to overcome our dysfunctional government, I retain that faith in the Israeli government and the Israeli people as to do that as well. And I think that it is a truly, truly extraordinary thing to be able to walk, to get on a plane, go to a Jewish state, see Jewish communities from all over the world that would never have met one another, that were growing up in merging completely different environments, jumbled together, yelling at each other, creating something both very fundamentally old and very fundamentally new, and to say, wow, I can do this. For 20, 30, 50 generations, this would have been utterly inconceivable. And yet I just got on a plane, and 10 hours later, I'm here. Right? What an incredible gift to be alive in that moment, to be alive at that time in history. And it's my hope that the extraordinary quality of Israeli society and the extraordinary sense of gratitude that so many of us have about being alive at this moment will give us the ability to come together in some way and change the trajectory that Israel's on. Thank you.
Look, we agree about the problematic nature of the occupation. We don't agree completely about where the responsibility for its continuation for so long lies, at least in certain way, balancing it of it all. But it's just not okay to say that Israeli democracy is dying. Israeli democracy is not dying. There's a reason that Palestinians who are gay or lesbian sneak across the border to go to Tel Aviv and don't come out on the West Bank. There's a reason that people are not protesting on the West Bank, even though Abbas is in the 11th year of a 4-year term. You think people don't know that? You think they don't care? You think they don't want to vote? You don't think they didn't notice this week that the Palestinians canceled elections once again? You don't think that Hamas understood, amazingly enough, that it was about to even lose on the Gaza Strip? Probably. That's where democracy is dead and has never had a whiff of fresh air. In 1896, Theodore Herzl gathered together the first Zionist Congress, and by 1897. And in 1898, the Second Zionist Congress, women voted and ran for office before women had the vote in any European country. Israel absorbed, it's now 8 million people more or less. It was 800,000 in 1948. It has increased tenfold in 70 years. No other country in the world has done that. And the vast majority of people who came as immigrants came from countries where there was no democratic background whatsoever. All those Russians, all those North Africans, all those Ethiopians, whatever you want to say about all those various kinds of people, they didn't come from democracies, and yet the democracy has chugged along barely with a hiccup. Unlike the United States, in Israel, the person who won the election actually has always gotten into office. So I'm very worried about what's going on in the West Bank. And I'm also not, ask my wife, I'm not the world's greatest optimist by instinct. And I'm deeply worried about what's going to be in the next 50 years. But I don't think that saying things like Israeli democracy is dying is very helpful, because all those Shin Bet and Mossad people that you quoted can speak and say that in Israel and get up and go about their business the next day. Whereas if somebody says that on the West Bank, they don't get up the next day. That's the difference. And what do Israelis think about this? A Yediot Achronot poll this week showed that if elections were held this week, and I know polls, schmalls, whatever, but the poll said that if elections were held this week, Bibi Netanyahu's party would get 22 seats in the Knesset. And 24 seats would be won by Yair Lapid. Is that going to happen? I don't know. Bibi's a master mover, and he's not going to call elections when he thinks he's going to lose, etc. But the Israeli population hasn't gone to sleep. The Israeli population is not stupid, and it's not stillborn. It also cares deeply. It just knows that to end the occupation under today's circumstances mean that my house, which is about 1 kilometer from the border, becomes the new Sderot. And we don't have a solution to that. Not for me and not for my children, and most importantly, not for my granddaughter. And I say that seriously. Until I know that getting out of those places does not mean that Hamas can take over and that rockets are not going to come flying over at me, we're not going to do it. We're simply not going to do it. What is going to make Israel feel that it actually has the support that it needs in order to take some risk that it's ultimately going to have to take? No question. An overwhelmingly supportive, not stupidly supportive, not blindly supportive, not robotically supportive, but a kishka supportive American Jewish community, so that Israel knows that the American Jewish community has its back. When it hears discourse like part of what it hears tonight, it actually says exactly what you and I are both saying. They're moving away. They've stopped caring. We've got problems with Washington and the White House and even a little bit with Congress. That ally is slowly withering away. That does not create the setting and the circumstances in which states take great risks. In our own lives, in our families, in our businesses, and whatever else, we take risk when we feel supported. And when we feel unsupported, we're unlikely to take risk. So I'll come right back to what I said before. I think the place that you and I can make the greatest possible contribution is in trying to get people to understand that Israeli democracy is vibrant, that Zionism is the national liberation movement of the Jewish people, and it's been overwhelmingly successful. That there's only one country in the Middle East where gays and lesbians can come out and live their lives the way that they want, where there is, one political party for every 10 people and a newspaper every 15 people, and the right of freedom of religion and the right of assembly. All the values that make this country great, all the values that make this country great, make that country great. Does that country have huge challenges to its democracy? It does. And if you're an African American in this country and you get pulled over for a speeding ticket, it doesn't feel like American democracy is in great shape. But that's not to say that America is collapsing at the seams or that we're about to cross the line of no return with America either. Great projects are often beset by great challenges. And great projects, it seems to me, deserve boundless loyalty and endless love.
You okay?